Greetings. I want to share some insights from Unit 6, which aligns with Chapter 7, International Markets. There's just two major topic areas I want to make sure you get your heads around because they also then feed into our two deliverables this week, which is our discussion question and our assignment. So perfect alignment there. So let me just give you kind of a brief overview on those. I'm going to jump over here and share my screen so we can kind of look at the same PowerPoint slides and hope that it'll kind of guide our discussion going forward. Make sure. Okay. Of course, it never shares the way I want it to. We'll get it here. There we go. Okay. Want to make sure we have the right set of slides up. So anyway, international market. So up until this point, we've been talking about uh, how to really look at our company, look at the future growth. And at some point, our domestic market may be saturated or it may not have the resources we need. So we need to look internationally. It's unrealistic in today's market, today's economy, to not be considering what's going on internationally and be totally focused on a domestic market. Now, certainly, if we're talking about a small business where you've got a regional constraint, this is where we operate, this is where we do business, that's fine. But when we get beyond any type of issue like that, then we're actually manufacturing products that there's a potential to sell them globally, then we really need to be asking why not? So I'm just going to touch on just briefly why international markets and then two different models. These five modes of entering, so five different ways to get going in another country, and then three approaches for competing internationally. So they're kind of strategies, if it were. So first off, get your head in this because when we're talking about global strategy, we're talking about, we could be talking about supply. So there's almost no company in the world that doesn't get its inputs, its raw materials, its supplies, its finished goods from another country. There's so much manufacturing going out there, and there's so many pricing benefits and costs that we're going to get some stuff from other countries. So that's almost a given. Demand is a bigger question, and that is the question of can we sell our products in those other countries, those other markets, or do we do both? And so in most cases, we will probably do both. But keep in mind, you could do either or. You could do supply, and so you get stuff from there because you get pricing advantages. It might be that you sell product because then you can get revenue advantages and really get to economies of scale. You can't sell enough in the United States because there's just so many customers in the United States, but there's 9 million, or no, there's 2.3 billion people in China. So there are lots of large markets out there that your product could potentially be sold into. So there are certainly risks with doing anything international, whether you're buying your supplies and your raw materials internationally or you're selling your product, and they fall under two categories, political or economic. So you should keep these in mind because these are some serious risks that can take something that looks really advantageous and suddenly turn it into a loss for you. So some kind of things to think about under political is think about different countries. There's countries in Africa that certainly have some potential to help us with manufacturing. There's also developing economies in Central America and even in Africa where you might sell your product. But things like government instability. So, what's the chance that the government's going to have a coup? I mean, I'm trying to think, it was Bolivia, I believe. So, it's a country you don't often hear a lot about in South America, had a coup in the last year or so and has gone through some continual turmoil. So, try to imagine how you would operate in a situation where the military is in control of the country. And so the ports are under control, the infrastructure is under control, the electricity might not be working. So, how can you manufacture or sell products when there's just turmoil? Otherwise, there's some countries that have much stricter regulations when it comes to environmental and labor issues. There's certainly corruption where you have to pay to play. So you have to pay off people in order to manufacture your product there. And we have laws in the United States that say if you're a U.S. company, you're not allowed to do that. So this can really get tough. And nationalization means what's the chance that the country will reorganize itself and suddenly your manufacturing plant, the government's going to say, no, it's no longer your manufacturing plant. It's now my manufacturing plant. So those types of things can happen, and they happen all over the world every year. So we have to choose carefully or be aware of what that would do to our operation should any of those things occur. Even more so on the economic side, we have things like exchange rates. If you're dealing in yuan and US dollars, that exchange rate between the two you have no control over. And if the exchange rate suddenly shifts, the product that you were making that could be made very inexpensively in an Asian country all of a sudden isn't being made as cheaply, just not by any fault of your own or anything you're controlling, but the exchange rate between the dollar and whatever their currency is has changed, or the dollar and the euro, or the dollar and the real. So, some really good discussions and examples of this in the text you can take a look at. These are very significant. And when we're looking at countries to consider engaging in their markets, is we can look and see, well, how stable has their currency been? And honestly, I'd be really looking at countries that, whether it's strong against the dollar or weak against the dollar, as long as it's stable against the dollar, I can work with that. I can find ways to do business. But if it fluctuates constantly, it can be extremely difficult to manage in that country. Inflation rates. If inflation's out of control, which it is in many countries, that means the cost to the people is going up exponentially each year. So what cost you $1 at the beginning of the year might cost you $3 by the end of the year. That can be extremely difficult to operate in. I put IP in because some countries don't have good laws to protect your intellectual property, your trademarks, your patents. And if you start doing business in that country, your property, your intellectual property could be easily stolen and replicated and basically run you out of business all over the world. Can be really a real problem. Monetary instability means something a little different than exchange rates, and that's monetary policy. And that's where we see here in the US, the federal banking system will change the interest rates, and that'll suddenly make things, inflation slow down or speed up. And so instability, again, just like exchange rates, can be a problem. So just getting in mind, it's just not always easy money going to these other countries. So now the text throws a couple models at us, which are really good to consider. And these come into play in our discussion question and the other in our assignment. And so modes of entry. So if I'm going to start doing business with, let's say, Chile or Brazil, I could just manufacture my product here in the United States and just send it to South America and sell it down there. So think about what that would mean for your control, the quality of your product, your ability to manage the flow. And also that might be an initial strategy where you initially just make your product here. You've got extra capacity. You use some overtime. You expand a little bit here in the United States, and you just produce more units and you send them somewhere else to be sold. Not a bad way to get started, but you pick up transportation costs. There may be tariffs involved. You still run into many complications, but that's one way is I could just make it here and send it. Number two would be to license your products to a foreign firm. So if you have something, let's say it's a slicer, dicer, mix master for in the kitchen, and you just have developed the perfect one, even better than the Ninja, then, and you decide this is an incredible design and it could be absolutely used by Brazilian kitchens. So I'm going to find a manufacturing firm that makes small appliances in Brazil, and I'm going to license my design to them. and they are going to make it exactly to my specification and sell it into the Brazilian market. That works. You still maintain some control over your product, but the manufacturing, the selling of it, the marketing of it, all of that is out of your control. And they would send you a fee, like a royalty each year to give you some of their profits. Not a bad way to go, but you lose a lot of control over your product. Franchise. Think about the McDonald's that are all over the world. So the McDonald's Corporation then goes to potential franchise owners in Russia, in Brazil, in Chile, and says, "Oh, how would you like to open a McDonald's in your town?" And you'll build the building to look like what I tell you the buildings of McDonald's look like, and you'll sell products that match what my products are. So you have a lot of control over the franchisee, but the reality is once they open for business, how much will they follow your rules? Will they continue to do? Will their employees dress in their little McDonald's uniforms and so forth? So franchise is an agreement again, but it's for another owner in another country will actually operate the business. So you lose control of operations. But they just send you a check each month for the money. So you get the money and none of the hassles of running the business in another country. Establish a subsidiary, so that's where I would go into that other country and I would buy an existing firm. So maybe there's a manufacturer there of small appliances, and rather than licensing them, I'm just going to buy them and I'm going to have them manufacture my Super Ninja. And then I will instantly be in that country. I'll have a building, I'll have networks, I'll have contacts, I'll have all of that infrastructure in place, and I'll just go in and buy it and start producing my product through it. Very expensive option. If you have the capital to do it, it works. But then you still are going to run into customs issues and taste issues and all of the uniqueness of each country. You'll have some of that knowledge because you'll have bought all the company and its employees, but you still may need to adapt your product some to that market. And finally, alliances and joint ventures. We talked about this type of pattern in the prior unit, and that is I will set up an agreement, and it gets very close to being a franchise type of arrangement or a licensing agreement. Alliances and joint ventures are where I find a company in a similar business as mine operating in that country, and we form an agreement and we say, here's the length of time we're going to do business. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share my product designs. You're going to manufacture them. And we're going to split the profit 60-40, all of those. So it's a lengthy contractual agreement. So all these ways you can, I hope, picture how I can quickly get set up in another country by choosing one of these methods. And I may even start with number one, import from the home country. And then over time, I may find a company down there that could manufacture it and I buy them. So this doesn't have to be a one time for all. I can transition as I gain strength in that country. So keep those in mind, those 5 modes of entry. You're going to need to use those in your deliverables this week. Let me jump over to the other one. Now, these are almost like the generic strategies we looked at in a prior chapter. These 3 approaches to international strategy, so these are specific for international engagements. And again, we're going back to our 2x2 matrix. And keep in mind that on the left side, on the y-axis, it's how much do we gain benefits from integration and standardization. So if I'm going to take my product, my Super Ninja, I'm going to manufacture it here in Ohio, and I'm going to ship it to Brazil to have it sold through a distribution chain there and a retail outlet chain. I'm going to get some good global integration, and I'm going to get great standardization because I just controlled the product and I'm selling it almost exactly in its primary form in Brazil. So that's going to put me way high on the y-axis. However, that machine may not properly slice and dice the types of food products that they use in Brazil. So maybe they have specialty items that they grow and they eat there, and it doesn't fit in my Super Ninja. That's where that bottom, that x-axis comes in along the bottom. The need for local responsiveness. So does my machine need to be tailored? Certainly, if you've traveled internationally, you've found that the electric systems differ between countries. Here in the United States, it's 120 volts. Over in Europe, it's 240 volts. You can't take something from the US and just plug it in necessarily in that other country. That's where local responsiveness comes in. Am I sending a food product that doesn't match the palate of the people in Brazil? It's not spicy enough. It's not flavorful enough. It's not whatever. It needs to be adapted. So these two continuums kind of fit, and I got to think about my products essentially, and this is exactly what you're going to have to do in the assignment this week. Is there's 5 products proposed, and you need to decide whether that product, and each of the 5 are different, is something that I really want to take advantage of standardization and global integration. So I'm going to make very little changes to the product, minimal, like only its voltage 120 versus 240, but everything else is exactly the same. That's going to put me way up in that top left quadrant. If it's something like a food product, and let's say I'm selling cream-filled chocolate cookies that look a whole lot like an Oreo, and I'm trying to sell those in China, regular Oreos might work, but the China tastes are a little different. There might be opportunity to really modify that product to match the Asian cuisine interests. So that's where you kind of vary, spread across this. So there's 3 of them. Number one, global strategy. In this case, I'm essentially going to replicate myself across those countries. So as much as possible, Apple iPhones, um, Dell computers, for the most part, other than electrical differences, I'm going to really try to sell those same products. Maybe I'll change the keyboard, make as minor adjustments as I can, because I just want to sell more product and I don't want to customize it. That would be a global strategy. And think of that as replicate myself, my products across the globe. Starbucks has essentially done that. I've been to the Starbucks all over China. I've been to the Starbucks in Europe, and I can order almost exactly my same coffee wherever I go. And it still costs $6 a cup. Multi-domestic strategy. This is the other end of the spectrum, and this is where I'm going to take my product line to other countries, but I'm going to allow it to be significantly modified so that it will meet the expectations of the consumers in that market. Particularly in food products, I'm going to have to do this because they're really going to have to be customized. People are not going to like my American style foods necessarily in South America, in Central America, in Asia. I'm really going to have to do some modifications. So multi-domestic is I'm going to be out there, and I may even change the name of my company so I market under different names in these different countries. But I know that I'm a food manufacturer and I know I have expertise in developing. Think about McCormick spices. And McCormick is really good at making spices here in the US. If they were to operate in Europe or in, especially in Asia, they would need to come up with a whole different series, a whole different line of spices. So that would be a multi-domestic where I'm out there, but I'm willing to completely customize my products. Transnational, as you can kind of spec, is that balance between the two, where I'm going to make some fairly reasonable and significant changes to my product, but I really want to take advantage of my uh, economies of scale and standardization. So if I'm making pretzels and I'm Snyder's of Hanover and I make my pretzels here in the US and they're those traditional Dutch style pretzels, that's great. If I go transnational, I may say, well, I know how to make these huge machines that can make tens of millions of pretzels a day. That's awesome. I know how to package them. I know how to put them in boxes. But I know in Asia, they're going to want different flavors on them. So instead of salt, I might use chai, or I might use some type of a tea type seasoning, or a jalapeno seasoning in South America. I don't know. So I'm willing to I want to take advantage of my economies of scale and I want to replicate my product, but I'm willing to make significant changes to it to match the local market. So think about those 3 when you're doing the assignment. So a couple comments on the discussion question this week. It's a sneaker expansion, and this looks at the five modes of entry: import, franchise, license, subsidiary, and alliance. Think about the pluses and minuses of each of those options. Also keep in mind that first slide where I talked about um, supply side international integration or demand side. And think about with sneakers, is there a chance that if I import, that means I'm going to have to make all those sneakers here and ship them to Africa, to South America, to wherever, whatever country I'm going to. But if I manufacture them there through a licensing agreement or a subsidiary or an alliance, then I take advantage of the labor markets in those countries. I might take advantage of the access to raw materials in those countries, as well as eliminating all that transportation to ship all those shoes from the United States. So really think through each of those options when you choose which one. Think about transportation costs, manufacturing costs, um, maintaining the quality of your product, maintaining your intellectual property, maintaining the integrity of your product. How would that fit with each of those five different models? Unit 5 assignment's a little more complicated, so please pay attention to these comments. So remember, these are our three generic international strategies. Which one for each of these five product lines? So it's gonna, the assignment gives you five specific product lines. Please be thinking about those two axes. And given the one type of product might be up here, other type of product might be better down here. So think about where those three fit, and balance those two uh, axes appropriately. The assignment calls for 15 slides in a 5-minute recorded presentation. That just grieves my soul. As a industry practitioner, you cannot do 15 slides in 5 minutes. 1 minute per slide. So plan on a cover slide and 5 product slides. So maybe a total of 6 slides, not 15. No way. Um, and do that in a format. You can use Prezi, you can use PPT, you can use that other software that he talked about back in Unit 4. Just make sure you save it as an MP4 and it's around 5 minutes long. But please, I'll put an announcement out on this too. But the assignment says 15 slides. If you give 15 slides and you try to cover them in 5 minutes, your grade will be horrible. So um, please, let's do this professionally. And professionals don't do 15 slides in 5 minutes. Although I just did 5 slides. Think about that. I did 5 slides in, this was probably a 15 or 20 minute presentation. Sorry, I did 10 slides. So think about even how fast I went through this, which was pretty darn fast. That was 10 slides. So please, please, please think about that. And hopefully you've made presentations at work. You know how this works. Don't fill your slides with garbage. Just give me the content and explain it. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides there. I'll cut off the presentation and just send me any questions you have.